topics and opinions expressed in the following show are solely those of the hosts and their guests and not those of W4CY Radio, its employees, or affiliates. We make no recommendations or endorsements for radio show programs, services, or products mentioned on air or on our web. No liability, explicit or implied, shall be extended to W4CY Radio or its employees or affiliates. Any questions or comments should be directed to those show hosts. Thank you for choosing W4CY Radio.
Welcome to the Ask the Expert show on W4CY Radio and Talk4 TV, where we bring you educational information from top local experts in the fields of legal, health, financial, and home improvement. Now sit back and listen to experts in family law, association law, hearing loss, business brokers, home care, along with many other topics. Now here are your hosts, Steve-O and Sophia.
Hey, good afternoon, Houston. Welcome to another Ask the Expert show, where we bring you the finest experts in the field of legal, health, financial, and home improvement. A little before I introduce you to our expert, I just wanted to tell people that, we do this show across the country, and one of our big markets is Florida, and we have had a community association show running there for 12 years. And in Houston, it's amazing. We got so many letters going, how come you don't do a community association law firm in Houston? And the reason why is we had never had any openings. We finally got an opening. I got on the internet, and we were so lucky. We found one of the top community association law firms, Lang and Associates. Let me introduce you to attorney Shannon Lang. Good afternoon, Shannon.
Hi, Steve. Great to see you again.
I am so excited about your show because I've learned over 12 years doing a community association show in Florida. There is so much to learn. And over the years, it's amazing, even after 12 years in Florida doing a show like that, is we still get letters, people, board members thanking us for having a show like this. And we're going to get to where board members just schedule your show in and they have all the board members. I guarantee you that's going to happen because we're already getting letters, people thanking us for your show.
Terrific. Glad to hear that.
Yes. So tell people about Lang and Associates.
Sure. Thank you. We're a small law firm here in Houston. I started the firm in 2016 after leaving the kind of big international law firms that I'd worked at previously. We focus on general commercial litigation and community association HOA law. And what that means for our clients is that we're in court a lot. And so we don't just collect debt or send letters about deed restriction issues. We litigate. And so for our clients, it means that we can actually help them with issues with their vendors or issues that go beyond the general day-to-day work of collecting assessments. I also come from a social work background and am stunned at how often that's been a useful skill and background to have just in dealing with the difficult personalities that you sometimes encounter in HOA, both with the homeowners and amongst the board. So I would say, our firm is kind of a go-to for communities in crisis. We have a lot of very difficult boards, either because of litigation history or personality conflicts, and we work hard to try to make things calm and productive, and I think we've been very successful in that regard. While at the same time, handling all the day-to-day issues that come up for our HOA clients.
Shannon, do you think that it'll ever get to a point where they pay board members?
I would be surprised by that.
Let me tell you why I asked that.
I think there might be some value in it as far as trying to attract board members. Unfortunately, sure.
I know the reason why I asked that in Florida, they seem like they have a hard time getting people to run for the boards. And I thought, I wonder if they paid people, if they would get more interest?
Yeah, I mean, I think that's a question that comes up. I of course would be worried about how that kind of corrupts the process. Even with our best communities and our best boards, we are constantly battling allegations from homeowners that board members are engaged in kickbacks or financial malfeasance. And I think introducing money into the equation probably enhances those concerns. I think from our perspective, the key for our associations is that they make sure they've got good management, good lawyers, good support services, so that board membership does become something that's just kind of a side obligation that takes you an hour or two a month and not a full-time job.
I've got to ask this because one of our uh, Florida resident owners, also has property in Houston. And, we had the towers here that went down in the Miami area. And boy, laws really changed a lot since then. Uh, did laws change very much in the Houston area after the Surfside incident?
They really haven't, but not from a legal perspective. I would say from a market perspective, in a lot of ways they have. We haven't seen the legislature mandate that condominiums be capitalized the way they're now being mandated in Florida. But what we are finding is that this has disrupted the insurance industry in such a massive way that our condominium clients are paying an extraordinary amount of money for coverage. And that is really prompting bigger questions about what assessments should be, what reserves should look like, and how these properties are better managed. The problem, of course, just like in Florida, is that nobody wants to be the board member that advocates for raising assessments, but assessments should go up, and they should probably go up every year, at least by the rate of inflation, because the cost of maintaining these buildings is extraordinary. And that's true no matter what kind of condominium you're in. I'm stunned at how many of our condo clients are paying $300 and $400 a month and think that that's a lot, even when they're getting water and insurance and roofs. It's just not sustainable. So even in this legislative session, we haven't seen any bills really focused on capitalization requirements. The laws here constantly focus on things like allowing people to have chickens, and pamphleting, more lifestyle rules than the things I think probably are a little more important to making sure that these condominiums maintain themselves as good investments.
We just got a question from Friendswood. Tom, I'm thinking about running for the board. Is there a certain type of experience you need to be on a board?
No, none. There's obviously things that can be helpful. If you know anything about construction, it might help. If you know anything about accounting or bookkeeping, it can help. But what we find is that the best board members are the board members who come in with a good attitude and some humility, which means that they're really there for the right reason. They want to volunteer to help their community, and they're open to having their opinions challenged and to listening to other points of view. Because board is a collective, and this challenge we often find with board members is they think that they're the king of the association or the queen of the association, when you're one of three or one of five or one of seven, and you all need to kind of speak with one voice to really be effective leaders. So no, I don't think there's any specific experience. You just need to have a willingness to serve, and in my opinion, the ability to listen and be on the losing side of votes without getting bent out of shape, because it'll happen from time to time.
Is there a big difference in Texas between HOA and condo laws?
Oh, yes, there are a lot of big differences. And this is where we run into a bunch of issues. So, when you talk about HOA and people go on the internet, they'll run into Chapter 209. And that's kind of the big provision of the property code that governs subdivisions, which are your regular single family home communities, sometimes they're townhomes, versus condominiums, which are subject broadly to chapters 81 or 82, depending on how old they are. And a lot of people just assume that 209 applies to everything. And so there's a lot of confusion between what you can and should do in a subdivision versus what you can and should do in a condo. Broadly speaking, because a condominium is characterized by the shared ownership structure, you own your unit basically the finished surfaces of the walls and floors inward, and an undivided interest in everything else. That shared ownership structure means that the condos really have a lot more power than you really have in a subdivision. And you want to make sure to exercise that well, because the condos also have extraordinary amounts of responsibility. And when those responsibilities aren't fulfilled, it can be a real problem. And we see that all the time. We represent a lot of 50 and 60-year-old properties. And because nobody wanted to raise assessments, they're now well outside the lifespan of their building materials and systems, and are struggling mightily in how to pay for repairs, maintain livability in the communities, and of course pay for insurance, which is very, very expensive in the condo market in Texas.
I got to tell you something, Chen. This is kind of a funny story. I'm sure you've heard about all the new laws are creating here in Florida. And we just found out that one of the lawmakers of about 12 that are in charge of HOA and condo, only one of the members lived in a community association. So here we have people making laws that don't really understand community association, which was kind of sad. But anyhow, I just wanted to kind of throw that in. I hope you don't have the same problem in Texas as we do in Florida. Uh, so now that you told me there's, gosh, a large difference between the rules and laws, statutes, and condo and HOA. If you were starting to get a lot of mail, please make sure you tell us if you're an HOA or condo. It really does help. Um, does the HOA have a reserve study, and what is the current reserve funding status?
So reserve studies are analyses that are done by trained professionals to kind of look at the hard assets of an association, predict their lifespan and the cost for repairs and replacement over time. And what the end result is in an ideal world is it will help the board determine what assessments should be. Because in addition to funding the day-to-day expenses of the association, your assessment should include some percentage of funding that goes into a reserve for those future expenses. Texas doesn't mandate that reserve studies be done. They are more common for condominiums than subdivisions, but we think there's value in them for everybody. If you've got a subdivision with a swimming pool, playground, gates, roads, knowing what the long-term costs of maintaining those assets are is really helpful to making sure that everyone's paying their fair share, and also to messaging why assessments are what they are. But for condos, we think this is really critical because, again, there's so many responsibilities for a condo. You're responsible for the roofs and the foundations and the exteriors and basically everything from the drywall out, most of the utilities, the parking lot, the gates, everything. And all of those things have limited lifespans. And with condo, because your assessments are generally paying for more than just amenities, they're paying your insurance, water, sometimes all of your utilities, management, legal, and all the rest. It's important to know that you're baking into those costs the cost of maintenance of your house. For me, I'm in a subdivision. When my roof goes bad, it's on me. And hopefully I've saved up money to pay for that roof. But for a condo, it's an expense of every person in that community. And so by the same vein, you want to make sure that everyone has put that money aside to pay for that roof when the day comes that you have to put one on. And reserve studies, therefore, are really critical. But a lot of our communities don't do them. So, because they don't want to pay for it. But 10 or 20,000 for 10 years is probably worth it.
This is from Jack in the Galleria area. He wants to know, now with all the electric vehicles out there, what do I have to do to get our community to put in some charging stations?
Yeah, we've had this question come up. This goes back to subdivision versus condo. I'm going to assume you're likely in a condo because in a subdivision, you should be able to plug into your garage.
Right.
It's challenging because you could very well be in a condo that pays for everyone's power. And so there's a hesitancy to add to that expense for the handful of electric car owners. I would I wouldn't expect that the state of Texas will mandate electric car charging stations in these communities anytime soon. Unfortunately, being an oil and gas state, there's not a lot of laws that support alternative fuel sources. But in that regard, I think it's important to talk to your board, explain the issues, and work with the board to get that support. These would likely be deemed capital improvements. They're generally not that expensive, though, but no, it's an improvement to be funded out of assessments. So what can you do? Really, it's get in with that board, talk to the board, run for the board, talk to your neighbors, get a groundswell of support. If you can't get the board to support you, as members, you always have some power to make change. It's hard, but look at your bylaws and see what's required for you to call a special meeting and try to amend your governing documents to mandate these types of things. Those votes are generally based on percentage ownership, which you can figure out from the CAD, the Central Appraisal District records. Because it's not generally one vote per unit, it's a percentage based on the size of your unit.
Can an individual owner, this is an HOA question, can they look at the latest financial statements?
Oh, yeah. Whether you're in a subdivision or a condominium, members have statutory rights to certain documents and records, books and records of the association. Broadly, that includes the financial records, meeting minutes, insurance, the insurance policies on the community, and I'm forgetting something. You can't get individual records of owners. You can't get legal privileged materials, but finances, absolutely. In well-run communities or communities with good management companies, those records are often maintained in a portal accessible to all members at any time. But if that's not the situation in your community, look in your governing documents, see if you have a books and records policy. If so, that will tell you how to make a request. If not, the property code will, chapter 209 for a subdivision, chapter 82 for a condo, and write a letter, certified mail, to the registered address for the condominium that specifies in detail the records you're looking for. We often get records requests that say, I want every record of the association, period. And while it's always our intention to try to honor that as much as possible, you can get pushback. So I would send a letter that says, dear, association, please make the following available for inspection or copies, whatever you prefer. I generally don't see why you'd want to go inspect. I just get copies, but and then specify what you want. The financial records to include the balance sheet, P&L, general ledger, and bank statements from this state to this state. And then if you don't get those in, don't quote me on this, but I want to say 10 business days, or a letter from the association telling you that they need another 10, it might be 15, I'm kind of forgetting right now. You have a remedy through the local small claims court. You can go to JP court, file a quickie lawsuit that says I want the records, and you can get a court order mandating that they be turned over, and you can get recovery of any costs and fees you incurred to do.
How are HOA fees determined?
Well, I can tell you how they should be determined. I think they should be determined through the careful budgeting process that also relies on a reserve study. But whether that's what people do is another issue. But in an ideal world, you'll have a history that says what expenses for the association look like, what your upcoming expenses are, and what your reserves are. And you take that number, you divide it by the number of payors, properties, and you come up with an annual or monthly number. What we find typically happens is that you've historically paid whatever, $500 a year. No board member wants to be the one that says raise assessments, so nothing happens. And then years go by and suddenly it's not enough to pay for anything, and suddenly you're told assessments are going up. But there's probably limits in the declaration as to how much they can go up, so it's not going to be enough, and you're still going to hear a lot of grumbling about insufficient funding. So it's unfortunate. And it's, again, unfortunate that so many boards are so hesitant to raise assessments, even by a few percentage points a year to keep up with inflation. But in an ideal world, you'll have a well-developed financial history that will help you determine what assessments should be and a reserve study.
Your show goes by so fast. We've got about another minute. Tell people why they should hire your firm.
We would love to talk to anyone who's interested in talking to us. I think what sets us apart from our competition is a few things. One, we answer the phone. You're not going to go through a phone tree. You're not going to have to struggle to talk to somebody. We have very stable staff here. The people that have worked here for years. We strive to have stability and to work hard to make the homeowner experience as positive as possible so that they have faith that their boards are making good decisions. So when your homeowners call here because they're in enforcement, they're going to be talked to with respect. They're going to be talked to by somebody whose goal is to solve the problem, and they're not going to have to keep telling their story over and over again. They'll talk to the same person or one of two people every time they call, and we are completely focused on solving the problem. We also have an office that people can come to, which is also surprisingly not common. So, if you're more comfortable making your payments here, or your board needs a place to meet, or you're just more comfortable operating in person, we're here. We try to really elevate customer service, even though, we're lawyers and lawyers aren't really known for that.
It's so obvious why your firm has been so successful. Give people your phone number and your website address for those who are listening on iHeart right now or Spotify.
Yeah, absolutely. Our number is 832-479-9400, 832-479-9400. And you can find us at shannonlanglaw.com. That's Lang, L-A-N-G. And we appreciate the opportunity to talk with you, Steve. It has led to folks calling us. We're happy to talk to boards, even if you just have a couple questions and don't necessarily need a lawyer. Like I said, we pick up the phone and we can generally, if we don't know the answer right away, we'll let you know.
Well, you'll be back again with us next month. I'm so glad we got your show. Houston's a very special city for me, growing up there. Thanks again, and we'll see you again next month, Shannon.
Terrific. Thanks so much, Steve. Good to see you.
That's same here. That's Shannon Lang of Lang and Associates. That's it for us today. We'll be back again with you next Friday with more Ask the Experts.
Thanks for tuning in today to the Ask the Experts show on W4CY Radio and Talk4 TV. Tune in next week and every week to hear more from our experts on personal injury, insurance, air condition repairs, estate planning, Medicare, and many other topics in the areas of legal, health, financial, and home improvement. See you next week.